What's going on, guys? Today's another new day and welcome back to the channel. Thank you again for watching. Today the plan is to install some seat risers in the new seats that I just put in. They are Corbeau RRX reclining seats. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. They're my last video. I'll leave the tag up here. I like the seats. I love how it looks with the interior that I have now. Problem is that they sit just a little too low for me, and I like to see my plane of view when I'm driving. So I'm gonna be installing these, raising the seat about 1.5 inches. I am gonna show you guys the process and walk you through why I chose this route instead of just buying spacers from another company. All right, so let's get into it. All right, guys, so here are the materials that you're gonna need if you wanna go this route. 1.5 inch steel tubing. This is perforated. Oh, I'm sorry. Punched square tube. I got this from Home Depot, but this is 1.5 inch and this is 14 gauge. Which is a little under 1/8 of an inch, which is good for me. If you guys follow me on social media, you'll see that I posted on my story, I did a quick FEA analysis of a similar profile, except I was comparing 1/16 of an inch wall thickness versus 1/8 of an inch wall thickness. And with the torque specs that I was using, the 1/16 of an inch had a little too much deformation for me, and the 1/8 of an inch had almost next to nothing. So I ended up going with 1/8 of an inch. Problem is the price for 1/8 of an inch square tubing is a little bit more expensive, and I'd have to go to a metal shop near me, and I didn't feel like doing that. I just wanted it now. So I went to the local hardware store, which in this case was Home Depot, and they carried this. This is 14 gauge. Like I said, a little under 1/8 of an inch, but we should be fine. When I mocked this up, I found that it was nice to have these punch square tube, and actually I just want to give a little shout out to Andy from Jersey Bear too, because he saw my post and he actually showed me a picture that he used something similar like this, and he said the holes lined up, but I wasn't sure, so I wanted to verify that. So I mocked them up, and it turns out that the holes actually do line up. So convenient for me. I don't actually have to drill anything at all. All I'm going to be doing today is just cutting them and installing them. So this is going to raise the seats 1.5 inch. They also have 1.25 inch and 1 inch. That's readily available at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, Menards, wherever you guys get your hardware in building materials. All right, so I'm going to be using this. I did have to swap out my hardware. So the original bolts that come with the seat are M8 bolts. They are 22 millimeter long, and these are now 55 or 60 millimeter long. I'm not sure. But when we get down there, I'll explain why, first of all, why you need longer bolts, obviously, because you're going to be spacing this out, but I will go in a little depth with that. But what I'm going to do first is cut this up, so that way we can go into the car, install them, and then I'll talk about the bolts and some techniques when you're installing custom stuff like this. To be on the safe side, you want to make sure that you are following certain guidelines and, I guess, safety regulations? Or standards, I should say, safety standards. Okay, so I'm gonna put the camera up and cut this up, and I'll be back. Alright guys, I'm back. I decided to clean up those metal shavings. I'm trying a new thing where, even though I'm in between projects, I know I said that I like to clean up after my project's done. It has been giving me peace of mind when I clean up right after I do something. So I put the Sawzall away and I cleaned up the metal shavings, and now we're back to a nice clean setup in the garage again. Okay, so let's go, and we got these cut up. And they don't have to be exact, because again, this is going to be underneath the seat, so you're not going to see it anyways. But we're going to take these and we're going to put them in there. So I'm going to get the camera set up inside the car, or at least close to the car, that way you guys can see what I'm doing. And then I'll also walk you through the hardware choice and some safety tips in installing seat risers to your seats. Okay, so underneath the seat is the seat bracket, obviously, and you have your 4 bolts. As I mentioned in previous videos, that's how you're going to mount them in. These are double locking seat brackets, sliders. The seats, oh, you know what, I'm actually gonna have to do it in here. But I'll take it out and show you guys what I'm talking about. There's mounting holes right here, 1, 2, and then 3 right there, and then 4 over there. You can't see it because of the lighting. And then underneath the seat you have mounting points here too. 1, and then 1 over there, 2, and then 1 down there, and 1 over there. Okay. So the original bolts was this. My size, I'm not sure if it's universal for aftermarket seats, but at least for Corbeau seats, these ones specifically, these are M8 by, I think the thread pitch is 1.25. In many cases, and in my case, you want to use this technique to determine the length of the bolt that you're gonna need. This is pretty simple stuff. If you're technically inclined or have some sort of technical background, you're gonna know exactly what I'm gonna show you here. But I'm gonna talk about thread engagement, why it's important to have thread engagement, proper thread engagement, especially when it's something regarding your seats. So this was the original bolt that came with the seat. This is 20 millimeters long. To determine the length, this is what you do. For those of you who don't know, take some calipers or whatever measuring device that you may have. Here, maybe this will help you guys out. I'm doing this with one hand, so bear with me. But from the bottom surface all the way to the end, bottom surface of the head all the way to the end. So in my case, we're at like 19.5. This is, you round it up, round it close enough. This is supposed to be a 20 millimeter long bolt. Okay. You don't measure the overall length, which includes the head of the bolt, which would be in this case 27. This is not correct. The length of the bolt is the shaft of the bolt, basically. Okay, so because this is 20 millimeters, I know that theoretically there is 20 millimeters of engaged thread. So what I do is, if I want to raise the seat 1.5 inches, you take 20 millimeters plus 1.5 inches, but you have to convert that to millimeters. And in my case, it came out to 58 millimeters. And your option there, because 58 isn't a standard length for a bolt, your option is either to go down to 55 or up to 60. In my case, I believe I went up to 60. And in some cases you don't want to do that, but in this case I can do that because the bottom of my seats are threaded. Let me draw this out for you guys actually. Let's say this is the through hole here. Has a bracket that's tapped. Okay. So here's your tapped hole. And then you have your threads here. So in my case, the thread engagement is going to be the width of the plate, or in some cases this could be a washer too. Okay, so this is either a plate or washer. Okay, so that's my thread engagement in my case. In some cases you can have say a hole like this. This is just a cross section, so I just want to show you guys visually, for visual purposes. And then your threaded hole will be like this. Alright, so let's say for example the hole depth here is 20 millimeters. Okay. Now if I were to get a bolt that is 30 millimeters, right, and we'll actually draw it in. 30 millimeter long bolt. Okay, let's just pretend that's the bolt, and it ends right here. We'll go from this dimension there, and we'll call this 30 millimeters. You can see that these surfaces right here, this surface and this surface, they're not touching, they're not mating. So you're actually bottoming out with a longer bolt, and you don't want to do that because you want to make sure that you clamp in these you want to make sure that these surfaces mate. In my case, if you were to use something like this and it wasn't a through hole and it was a tapped hole, I have to be very careful with the length of the bolt that I choose, or else this could happen. And I'm going to try and represent by putting the bolt in, right? And let's say the seat, this is the bottom of the seat. So you bolt this in, what will happen is you're torquing this down, and then the bolt won't go any further because you bottomed out in the hole. And so now this is just floating in free space. This piece right here is floating in free space, and that's no good. You don't want that. Okay, so if this is universal for aftermarket seats and they are all tap plates or welded nuts, then you're safe. You can just go with this. You will just need to make sure that you just do what I did and get the length of the original bolt, and then obviously add the thickness of whatever the riser is going to be. Okay, so in my case, these are 60 millimeter long bolts that are going to go in to the risers and then underneath the seat, so it's going to look like this basically. I need to talk about torque values. One thing you want to do for sure is when you're installing this to use Loctite. In my case, I have some like generic ones. Maybe this is from Harbor Freight or something, but blue Loctite. Don't use red because then it's going to be really hard to take off. But you want to use Loctite so that way your car experiences vibrations, and that's going to transfer through your seat through the bolts. You don't want those bolts backing out and then your seat ends up becoming loose and you're shifting all around the car. That's very, very dangerous. You don't want that at all. So use Loctite and torque your bolts down to the right spec. In my case, I'm going to be using a torque chart from Fastenal. I will leave a link down in the description to where that is, so that way whenever you guys are doing your custom projects, you can reference this torque chart and then and just use it, you know, so then you can figure out what the torque value is for a standard bolt. So for example, this is an M8. I don't know what the metric standard is for the material that they use, but the ANSI, I think, standard, or what we use in the US, is grade A574 for socket head cap screws. The torque value will range depending on if the threads are lubricated or if they're dry or if they're semi-lubricated. And in that chart, you can just look at it and you can see that, oh, okay, well, this is a lubricated thread because, again, use Loctite. So since it's a lubricated thread, you will use the lubricated torque value for this size bolt. So for my seat and for these seats, if you guys are going to buy the same ones, this is the underside of the bracket. And there are 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, that you will need to unscrew. This is what I just wanted to show you. And then this can slide up and down just like that. I'm going to take the seat bracket off and then put the seat risers on with it, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like with it on. So this is what the risers look like when they are mounted. I want to show you guys something too. So part of the reason why I went with the square tubing is you can see the surface. See the width of this surface? It's about 1.5 inch, and the width of this surface is 1.5 inch. Same with the other side, and this is why I kind of stray away from using these cylindrical spacers, because these spacers are only going to be a certain diameter, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to be 1.5 inch in diameter. Probably be a little bit smaller, but even more so, you're not getting any contact further down the riser. But in this case, if something were to fail, say this bracket, I don't know, breaks off for whatever reason, at least there's this bar right here, and these springs can sit on this riser here, or this square tubing. And then same with down there at the bottom, the mounting surface down at the bottom. Sorry, went out of focus. So I kind of went with these because I like how, you know, there's more of a contact. There's more contact on surfaces than just cylindrical spacers. And again, you got to be careful with the thickness of the tubing that you go with. In my case, like, we have a little bit of deflection here, but I did get it to the torque value that I needed, which was, I think I used 10.5 foot-pounds. The torque chart calls for 12, but I'm using roughly like 70 or 80% of the actual clamping load, just because it's lubricated as well. So these are good to go. I'm gonna put the seat back in and basically wrap this up. All right, guys, so the seat risers are in, both the driver and passenger side. I'm gonna go ahead and hop in the seat just to make sure I'm happy, and you guys get to see my reaction, even though it's fake because I've already tried it. But you guys get to see my reaction again. Oh, it's much better. This is it, guys. Oh, by the way, I colored this too. I don't know if you guys seen this on my Instagram story, but I will be adding some hints of burnt copper. And so funny story is, I took some nail polish that I found and I colored in the letters, and then after that I took a cotton swab with acetone to get rid of all the nail polish that was outside of the lettering. And so this turned out pretty good though. Yeah, there it is. But that's about it for this video. Again, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions regarding the seat riser, feel free to ask. Again, I'll put the material list in the description, and if I'm missing anything else, I'll put it down in the description. But yeah, so take it easy, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.